They thought 80 years would break me. They thought war had taken my strength, that age had dulled my eyes, that I was too tired to fight anymore. They forgot where I came from. They forgot that I first smelled gunpowder at 14 and never let go of the battlefield since. And now my own family decided they could finish the job that war never could. My name is Bob Hunter. Dallas, Texas is my home, though I've seen more deserts and jungles than most men twice my age. I'm 80 years old, and I carry the weight of battles that never made the history books. I fought wars, buried friends, outlived my wife, and still got up every morning to make sure my children and grandchildren had everything I never did. I thought the fight was behind me. But last week, I learned the cruelest truth of all. Sometimes, the real enemy wears your last name. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. It happened on a Tuesday. I was sorting through my mail, bills, a magazine I didn't order, a coupon for a free hearing test I don't need, when I found an envelope with the Dallas County seal. My stomach tightened the second I saw it. Official mail never means good news. I opened it slow, hands steady as they've always been. Inside was a letter that read like a death sentence. The court has received a petition for guardianship. A hearing has been scheduled to determine your ability to manage your financial affairs. Guardianship. At my age, that word means one thing. They want to declare me incompetent, helpless, finished. At the bottom of the page, in neat black ink, it listed the petitioners. Petitioner, Daniel Hunter, son. Supporting affidavit, Linda Carter, daughter. My own blood. I set the paper down, and the kitchen around me blurred for a moment. The old wooden table, the clock ticking on the wall, the smell of coffee that had gone cold. All of it faded under the weight of betrayal. Daniel, my only son, the boy I taught to fish at White Rock Lake, the boy I carried on my shoulders when he broke his leg at 12, the man I bailed out when he drowned in debt at 35. He wanted me declared unfit so he could get his hands on my pension. Linda, my little girl, the one who used to draw pictures of me in uniform, the one I walked down the aisle when she married. She signed her name saying her father couldn't think for himself anymore. And why? Because I'm 80? Because I walk with a cane and sometimes my knees crack when I stand? They think old means weak. They think old means blind. But here's what they don't know. War taught me patience, discipline, the value of silence. I learned how to play dumb when it suited me, how to let the enemy think they were winning right before I cut them off at the knees. So I decided, right there at the kitchen table, staring at that piece of paper, that if my children wanted a war, I'd give them one. I didn't call them, didn't confront them. That would have been too easy, too messy. Instead, I picked up my phone and dialed an old number I hadn't used in years. Hunter, a voice growled after the second ring. Carter, I said, smiling despite the bitterness in my chest. You still practicing law, or just drinking yourself to death? A low laugh. Still practicing. What's the problem, old man? The problem, I said, is my son and daughter think they can steal my life out from under me. I need someone who knows how to fight dirty, legally. Meet me tomorrow, he said, and bring everything. I hung up, leaned back in my chair, and let the silence of the house settle around me. The air was thick, heavy. Margaret's photograph stared at me from the mantel, her smile frozen in time. I whispered to it. Looks like I'm going back to war, sweetheart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked the halls of my house, listening to the floorboards creak, hearing the ghosts of the past in every shadow. My knees ached, my hands stiffened, but my mind was sharp as a blade. I thought about my 4 grandchildren. 2 of them were still young, innocent, with no idea what their parents were plotting. The other 2, teenagers, old enough to see, old enough to choose a side. They looked up to me once. Maybe they still did. But this wasn't about winning them over. This was about survival. This was about teaching Daniel and Linda one final lesson. You don't betray a soldier and expect him to surrender. The next morning, I put on my old jacket, the one with the faded patch from my unit, and drove downtown to see Carter. The city felt different, colder somehow. Dallas had grown since my youth, but betrayal makes every street look foreign. Carter was waiting in his office, walls lined with dusty law books, his desk cluttered with files. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes were sharp. The same eyes I'd seen behind a rifle in Vietnam 50 years ago. "Tell me everything," he said. I dropped the petition on his desk. "They think I'm senile. They think I can't fight back. They want the court to hand them my pension, my accounts, my house. They want to lock me away while they spend my life." Carter scanned the document, his frown deepening. "This stinks. Guardianship's a serious move. They'll need a medical affidavit, at least one doctor willing to say you're incompetent." "They've got one," I said. "But it's a lie. Paid for, I'd bet my life." Carter leaned back, lit a cigarette, and studied me through the smoke. "So what do you want to do?" I met his gaze without blinking. "I want to let them think they're winning. I want to let them believe the old man's losing his mind. And then I want to crush them with the truth." A slow grin spread across his face. "Damn, Hunter, you haven't changed a bit." "No," I said, my voice like steel. "But they have, and that's their mistake." Carter told me the first rule of this kind of fight: make them believe their own lie. So that's what I did. I let Daniel and Linda think they were right. I let them see what they wanted to see: an old man slipping, a tired veteran fumbling with his words, a shaky hand reaching for a glass of water. The next Sunday they stopped by, together. That didn't happen often, unless it was about money. Linda brought her youngest boy along, 12 years old, bright-eyed and quiet. Daniel came in wearing his tailored suit, the one that screamed success while hiding the truth of debts he never mentioned. "Hi, Dad," Linda said, sugar in her voice. "Too sweet. We just wanted to check on you. See how you're doing." I shuffled to the couch slow, leaning heavy on my cane. "Well," I muttered, letting my words trail. "Memory's not what it used to be. I forget things' names sometimes." Her eyes flickered to Daniel. I caught it, a small spark of victory between them. Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You know, Dad, maybe it's time we talked about the future. About making sure everything's handled properly if things get worse." I blinked at him, feigning confusion. "Worse? You mean?" "Just that we want to help," he said quickly. "Take some of the burden off you. You've done enough for us." Help. That word, when it came from Daniel, always meant take. I nodded slowly, staring down at my hands like I was lost. "I suppose you might be right." Linda smiled, relief softening her face. "Exactly, Dad. You don't need to stress about bills or accounts. Daniel can manage those things. It's what he's good at." I almost laughed. The man couldn't manage a lemonade stand without a loan shark breathing down his neck. But I didn't laugh. I sighed instead, let my shoulders slump. Maybe that's best." Her son looked at me, confused, sensing something wasn't right. Kids see what adults ignore. His eyes met mine, and for a second, I let the mask slip. Just a second. Enough to show him the steel's still there. That night, after they left, I called Carter. "They've swallowed the bait," I told him. "Good," he said. "Next step is evidence. We need to know how far they're willing to go, and we need to catch them in it." So I started keeping records. Every call, every visit. I bought a small recorder, the kind you slip into your shirt pocket. Cheap, reliable. Military-grade habits never die. The very next week, Daniel called. His voice was casual, too casual. "Dad, how's your health? You been to the doctor lately?" I clicked the recorder on. "Not in a while," I said, letting my voice drag. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, just wondering. At your age, it's important to keep regular checkups. Maybe I could set you up with a doctor I know. Someone who understands these things." A doctor. The affidavit. He was lining up the false witness. "Sure," I mumbled. "Whatever you think is best." After the call, I played the recording back. His voice, smooth and calculated, was captured perfectly. That was Exhibit A. Days turned into weeks. I built a case quietly, piece by piece. Linda visited with papers she said were just routine documents for the court. I signed nothing. Instead, I slipped copies into my desk drawer and scanned them into Carter's files. Each one proved their intent clearer than the last. But I didn't stop at paperwork. I watched them. Old soldiers know how to wait and watch. At a barbecue, I overheard Daniel bragging to a friend about soon coming into money. At church, Linda whispered to a neighbor that she was taking care of her father's affairs because he wasn't really capable anymore. The lies spread fast. Rumors sprouted like weeds. And I let them, because weeds are easiest to pull when they're tall and visible. One night, my eldest granddaughter, Emily, came by. She's 19, college student, sharp as a knife. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, her eyes narrowing. "Grandpa," she said, "what's going on? Dad and Aunt Linda keep talking about you like you're sick. But you're not. You're sharper than anyone I know." I smiled faintly. She was right, and she deserved the truth. "Emily," I said, lowering my voice, "your father and your aunt are trying to take everything I've worked for. They want to put me in a home, lock me away." Her face went pale. "What? That's insane." "It's betrayal," I said simply. "But I'm not fighting it alone. I need you to keep quiet. Watch. Listen. You'll know when the time comes to speak." Her jaw tightened. "I'm with you, Grandpa." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That's all I needed to hear. When she left, I felt something I hadn't in years. Hope. Maybe not for my children. They'd made their choice. But for the next generation. At least one of them still had a backbone. By the end of that month, I had everything. Recordings, false papers, witnesses who'd overheard their words. The net was tightening, and they didn't even see it. Carter called me late one evening. "Hunter, you've got enough to bury them already. We could move now." "No," I said firmly. "Not yet. Let them dig deeper. The deeper the hole, the harder it is to climb out." He laughed. "Same old soldier. You always did like to wait until the last second." "Patience wins wars," I said. "And this war is mine." I hung up, walked to the mantel, and looked at Margaret's photo again. I imagined her voice, soft but steady. "Don't let them take your dignity, Bob." "I won't," I thought. "They can have every rumor, every fake paper, every lie. But they'll never take my dignity. And soon enough, they'll learn that the old soldier they tried to bury still knows how to fight." The knock came on a Wednesday afternoon. Sharp, impatient. I opened the door slow, leaning heavy on my cane. And there they were. Daniel, Linda, and a man in a white coat holding a clipboard. "Dad," Daniel said, smiling too wide. "This is Dr. Miller. He's just here for a routine checkup. Nothing to worry about." A doctor at my door without an appointment? That was no checkup. That was Exhibit B waiting to be collected. I nodded weakly. "All right, come in." My voice cracked, as if from fatigue. My body may be old, but my performance was flawless. Dr. Miller sat across from me in the living room, flipping through his clipboard. He was mid-40s, polished, the kind of man who'd never known dirt under his nails. His smile was fake, his tone rehearsed. "So, Mr. Hunter," he began, "your children tell me you've been having some trouble lately. Forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty managing daily tasks. Is that right?" I blinked at him slowly. "Sometimes. I forget where I put my glasses." Daniel leaned forward. "See, doctor? That's what we were talking about." I coughed into my hand, pretending weakness. Then I lowered my voice. "But I remember the war just fine. Vietnam. 71. Miller, you wouldn't know what that smells like. Burning diesel. Wet jungle. Blood. I remember every face, every bullet." The doctor's smile faltered. He scribbled something. Linda cleared her throat. "Dad, he just needs to know about your daily life. Bills, medicine, that kind of thing." "Oh," I muttered. "Yes. Bills are complicated. My son helps me. My daughter, too. They're very eager to help." Her lips twitched, but she stayed silent. What she didn't know was that the small recorder in my shirt pocket was already running. Every word the doctor said, Every coached response they tried to force out of me was being saved. Dr. Miller asked me to do little tests, repeat numbers backward, draw a clock, remember 3 words. I played it clumsy, deliberately drew the clock wrong, hesitated with the numbers. Each mistake made Daniel sit taller, Linda nod with satisfaction. But halfway through, I leaned in, looked Dr. Miller dead in the eye, and whispered just loud enough for the recorder to catch it. "You know this is fraud, don't you? You know what you're doing." He froze, pen hovering over the clipboard. "What was that, Dad?" Linda asked quickly. I shook my head. "Nothing. Just nothing." Dr. Miller cleared his throat, scribbled faster. But I saw the sweat starting at his temple. He wasn't used to being challenged. When they left an hour later, Daniel patted my shoulder. "Don't worry, Dad. We're just trying to make sure you're taken care of." "Of course," I said, nodding weakly. "I know you'll do what's best." He smiled, satisfied, not knowing that every lie, every staged concern, was now on tape. That night, I met Carter in his office and slid the recorder across his desk. He listened, shaking his head, smoke from his cigarette curling in the dim light. "Jesus, Bob," he muttered. "They're digging their own graves. This so-called doctor doesn't know half the legal landmines he just stepped on." "What's next?" I asked. "Next," Carter said, "we let them submit this affidavit. Once it's official, it's evidence of fraud. We'll have them boxed in with no way out." I nodded. Strategy 101. Never interrupt the enemy while they're making mistakes. But I wasn't only thinking about affidavits and fraud. I thought about my grandchildren. About Emily, who already knew the truth. About Linda's boy, the quiet 12-year-old who watched me with those questioning eyes. They deserved to see this for what it was, not just a legal fight, but a lesson. A lesson about blood, loyalty, and betrayal. 2 days later, Daniel called again. "Dad, good news. Dr. Miller wrote up a full report for the court. Don't worry, it'll make things smoother for you." Smoother. That word twisted in my gut. Smooth was another way of saying buried alive. I played my part, mumbling thanks. Then I hung up and stared at the darkening sky outside my window. The cicadas were screaming in the trees, the hot Dallas night pressing against the glass. I whispered to Margaret's photograph, the same way I always did. "They think I'm fading. They think they're winning. But they've forgotten one thing. I was forged in war, and war doesn't forgive traitors." That night, I packed a small leather folder with everything I'd gathered so far, recordings, notes, copies of the fake documents Linda left behind. I slid it under the floorboard in my study. Old soldier's habit. Never keep all your weapons in plain sight. The battle wasn't finished. It was just beginning. The letter came on a Friday morning. Heavy paper, official seal, the kind of envelope that makes your stomach tighten before you even open it. In the matter of guardianship, hearing scheduled. Petitioners Daniel Hunter and Linda Carter. So it was official. My children weren't just whispering about my weakness anymore. They'd put it in ink, filed it in court, asked a judge to strip me of my rights like I was some senile invalid. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter spread out before me. Sunlight cut through the blinds, striping the page in shadows. I didn't move for a long time. Just listened to the ticking of the clock, steady as a heartbeat. When I finally picked up the phone, Carter answered on the first ring. "They filed," I said flatly. "I figured they would," he replied. "That's good. Now we have jurisdiction. Now it's real. And when it's real, we can hit back." The following week was a test of endurance. Daniel called often, each time with a syrupy tone that made my teeth ache. "Dad, don't worry about anything. Linda and I will handle all the paperwork. You just focus on resting." Resting, like I was already in the grave. I let him talk. Let him think I was nodding along. Then I pressed stop on the recorder in my pocket and labeled the file Exhibit C. Linda visited too, bringing one of her famous casseroles, the kind she hadn't cooked for me in years. She fussed over the temperature of the house, whether my medicine was lined up right, if I was sleeping well. Her voice dripped with concern, but her eyes were calculating. Always checking, measuring how much longer until the papers went through. I smiled weakly, thanked her for the food, and made sure the little camera I'd hidden in the corner of the living room caught it all. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. By midweek, Carter called me into his office. His desk was covered in folders, each one with my name on it. He tapped a stack of papers. Affidavit from Dr. Miller. Says you're showing early dementia, trouble with orientation, confusion in daily activities. Complete fabrication. And here, he slid another paper forward. Financial petition. Daniel named as your primary guardian. Linda as alternate. They're not even subtle about it. I leaned forward, the weight of betrayal pressing heavy on my chest. They really think the court's just going to hand them my life. Not once we're finished, Carter said. He lit a cigarette, blew out smoke, and gave me a grin I remembered from 50 years ago in the jungle. I've seen worse lies fall apart with less evidence. All we need is timing. Timing. Always the key to survival. So I waited, played my role, let them think the walls were closing in. On Sunday, Daniel and Linda invited me to dinner at Daniel's house. Just family, Linda promised. We want to talk about the future. The future. That word felt like poison in her mouth. I went. Sat at their polished oak table under the glow of a chandelier I knew was bought with borrowed money. My grandchildren sat nearby, mostly silent, eyes darting between their parents and me. They could feel the tension, even if they didn't understand it fully. Daniel cleared his throat halfway through the meal. Dad, we've been thinking. Once this hearing is done, we can get you moved somewhere more comfortable. A nice facility in North Dallas. They'll take good care of you there. A facility. A nursing home. That was their plan all along. Strip me of my rights. Dump me in a place where old soldiers go to die, and drain my accounts while I rot. I looked down at my plate, pushed peas around with my fork, and let my hands shake just enough to look convincing. If that's what you think is best. Linda reached across the table, squeezed my hand. Of course it is, Dad. You deserve peace. Peace. I nearly laughed. Peace is a lie you sell a man when you're about to bury him. I didn't argue, didn't resist. I just let the silence stretch until the conversation shifted to safer topics. But my eldest granddaughter, Emily, caught my eye. Her jaw was tight, her gaze sharp. She saw through it all. That night, when I got home, I sat in Margaret's chair and whispered to her photo. They want to lock me away, but I'll turn their prison into a courtroom. And when it's over, they'll be the ones in chains. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked with Carter to prepare. We gathered every recording, every false paper, every witness who'd heard Daniel bragging or Linda whispering. Carter lined it all up like ammunition. But I added something of my own. I wrote letters. One for each grandchild. Letters telling them the truth. Not the legal jargon, not the strategy, but the plain truth that their parents were trying to erase me. That love doesn't look like signatures on fraudulent documents. And that dignity is worth more than any bank account. I sealed the letters and tucked them away, to be opened only when the time was right. The hearing was scheduled for a Monday morning in downtown Dallas. I polished my shoes, pressed my shirt, and carried my cane with the same posture I once carried a rifle. Let them think I was frail. Let them underestimate me one last time. As I walked into that courtroom, the air heavy with whispers, Daniel gave me a reassuring smile like I was some confused old man about to be guided through a process I couldn't understand. But I understood everything. And I was ready. The courtroom smelled like old wood and cold air conditioning. The kind of place where whispers die quickly and lies echo louder than truth, unless you know how to aim them. I sat at the respondent's table, cane leaning against my chair, back straight. My children sat across from me. Daniel in his expensive suit, Linda in a navy dress that made her look like a schoolteacher instead of the woman who signed my future away. Their lawyer was young, slick, all confidence and no scars. He kept patting Daniel's shoulder like victory was already in the bag. The judge entered. Everyone rose. I did too, slow but steady, showing age without surrender. "Be seated," the judge said. His voice was flat, tired. Another Monday morning. Another case. To him, I was just another old man fighting the tide of time. Their lawyer started first. He painted a picture of me as a frail veteran, confused, forgetful, unable to manage daily life. "Mr. Hunter's children are only acting in his best interest," he said smoothly. "This petition is about love and protection." Love. Protection. I gripped the handle of my cane tighter. Linda dabbed her eyes with a tissue as the lawyer spoke, crocodile tears for the record. Daniel kept nodding solemnly, as if the words were gospel. They were putting on a performance, and I'll admit, they almost had the room convinced. Then it was Carter's turn. He stood, gray-haired, steady, a bulldog in a wrinkled suit. "Your Honor," he began, "my client may be 80 years old, but age does not equal incompetence. And this case isn't about love or protection. It's about greed." A murmur rippled through the gallery. The judge raised an eyebrow. Carter let the silence linger before continuing. "We will show that this petition is based on fabricated evidence, paid for medical reports, and a deliberate attempt to strip Mr. Hunter of his rights in order to seize his assets. And we'll let the petitioner's own words prove it." Daniel shifted in his seat. Linda glanced at him, nervous. The judge motioned for Carter to proceed. "Mr. Hunter," Carter said, turning to me, "can you tell the court about the day your children brought Dr. Miller to your home?" I cleared my throat, let my voice waver just a little. "They said it was routine, just a checkup, but I knew it wasn't. They wanted proof I couldn't take care of myself." Carter nodded. "And did you record that conversation?" "Yes." I pulled a small device from my pocket and set it on the table. Carter pressed play. The courtroom filled with Daniel's voice. "Dad, maybe it's time we talked about the future. Once things get worse." Then Linda's voice. "Bills are complicated. Daniel can handle them. It's what he's good at." Finally, my own voice, clear and direct. "You know this is fraud, don't you? You know what you're doing." The doctor's pause, his stammer, filled the room. The gallery buzzed. The judge leaned forward. "Order. Order in the court." Carter stopped the recording. "Your Honor, this is only one piece of evidence. We have more. Documents my client was asked to sign. Rumors spread in the community. Even witnesses who overheard Mr. Hunter's children bragging about their future inheritance." The judge turned to Daniel and Linda's lawyer. "Do you wish to respond?" The young man stood, his voice a little less confident now. "Your Honor, these recordings could be taken out of context. Mr. Hunter clearly suffers from lapses in memory. What he perceives as fraud may just be misunderstanding." Carter slammed a folder down on the table. "Then explain this. Financial petition naming Daniel Hunter as guardian and primary beneficiary of all accounts. Filed before any medical report was submitted." The judge took the folder, flipped through it, his frown deepening. He looked at Daniel. "Mr. Hunter, how do you explain this timing?" Daniel swallowed hard. We just wanted to be proactive. To protect him." The judge's eyes narrowed. "We'll come back to that." Linda's face was pale, her tissue forgotten on the table. She looked like a soldier caught in the wrong trench. I sat there, calm, steady, like I'd been on patrol 100 times before. Because I had. The battlefield had changed, but the tactics were the same. Let the enemy think they control the ground, then turn it against them piece by piece. When the judge called a recess, Daniel stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyer chasing after him. Linda stayed seated, staring at me. Her lips trembled. "Dad," she whispered when the room emptied, "why are you doing this? We're your family." I leaned closer, my voice low and cold. "Family doesn't stab you in the back and call it protection. You made your choice, Linda. Now live with it." She looked away, blinking fast, as if the tears were real this time. But I'd learned long ago, tears don't win wars. Truth does. When recess ended, Carter leaned toward me, his voice just above a whisper. "You ready for round two?" I gripped my cane, straightened my back, and nodded. Always. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. When the hearing resumed, Daniel's lawyer tried to recover ground. He called Dr. Miller to the stand. The man walked in crisp and confident, his white coat spotless, clipboard under his arm like a shield. Dr. Miller, the lawyer began. Please state your findings regarding Mr. Hunter's condition. The doctor cleared his throat. Based on my professional evaluation, Mr. Hunter exhibits signs of mild dementia. He has difficulty recalling information, struggles with daily tasks, and appears disoriented at times. In my opinion, guardianship is warranted to protect his well-being. Daniel sat taller. Linda dabbed her eyes again, and their lawyer smiled like the fight was over. Carter rose slowly, hands in his pockets. Doctor, how long was your evaluation of Mr. Hunter? Approximately 45 minutes, Miller said. 45 minutes, Carter repeated. And in that time, you made a medical judgment that could strip an 80-year-old man of his legal rights. Miller shifted uncomfortably. Yes, it was a professional evaluation. Carter nodded. Professional. Did Mr. Hunter consent to this evaluation in writing? The doctor blinked. Well, his children arranged it. Did Mr. Hunter himself consent? No, but... No further questions, Carter said, cutting him off like a blade. The judge frowned, scribbling notes. Then Carter turned. Your Honor, we'd like to enter additional evidence. A recording taken during Dr. Miller's visit to Mr. Hunter's home. Miller's head jerked up. What recording? Carter pressed play. My voice filled the room. You know this is fraud, don't you? You know what you're doing. The silence that followed was thick. Miller's face drained of color. Doctor, Carter said quietly, would you like to explain to the court why you didn't report that the man you claimed was confused accused you of fraud, and you failed to deny it? Miller stammered, sweating now. It was taken out of context. I didn't want to upset him. Upset him, or expose yourself. Carter shot back. The gallery stirred, whispers sharp as knives. The judge's gavel slammed. Order. Miller looked down, defeated. For the first time, Daniel and Linda's lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Carter wasn't done. He called the first witness, a neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, who'd overheard Linda at the grocery store bragging that once Dad's affairs are settled, things will get easier. Then another, an old friend of Daniel's, who testified that Daniel had joked about finally cashing in on Dad's pension. Piece by piece, the facade cracked. During a break, Daniel cornered me in the hallway, his face red with fury. You think this proves anything, old man? You think one recording and a bunch of gossip will save you? I leaned on my cane, steady as a soldier on parade. You've already lost, Daniel. You just don't know it yet. His fists clenched, but he didn't swing. He couldn't. This wasn't the battlefield he thought it was. This was mine. When court resumed, Carter made his final move for the day. He slid another folder onto the judge's desk. Bank statements, he said. Evidence that Daniel Hunter applied for a personal loan last month, listing his father's pension as a guaranteed resource, before any guardianship was even granted. Daniel's lawyer sputtered. Objection. The judge raised a hand. Overruled. Mr. Hunter, is this true? Daniel's face was pale now. It was just planning ahead. The judge's eyes were cold. Planning ahead with money that isn't yours. The gavel struck. This court is adjourned until Thursday, and I advised the petitioners to prepare better answers. When the courtroom emptied, Linda lingered. She didn't look at me until the last person left. Then she whispered, her voice shaking, Dad, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I looked at her, my own daughter, the girl I'd once carried on my shoulders. My voice was calm, but sharp as broken glass. You meant it enough to sign your name. You meant it enough to watch them try to bury me. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came. She turned away, shoulders slumped. That night, I drove home through the Dallas streets, neon lights flashing across my windshield. My hands gripped the wheel tight. I thought about Margaret, about the family we'd built, and the rot that had crept into it. They wanted to take my dignity, my freedom, my life. But I'd taken something from them instead. I'd taken their certainty, their arrogance, their illusion of control. And on Thursday, I was going to take everything else. Thursday morning, the courthouse was packed. News had leaked. An 80-year-old veteran dragged into court by his own children, accused of being unfit. Dallas eats stories like that for breakfast. Reporters sat in the back row, pins scratching, cameras ready. Daniel looked sharp in another new suit, but I saw the cracks, the twitch in his jaw, the sheen of sweat on his forehead. Linda avoided my eyes, clutching her tissue like a lifeline. The judge entered, and the room settled into a tense silence. "Mr. Carter," the judge said, "you may proceed." Carter stood slowly. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. "Your Honor, over the past week we've shown how the petitioners attempted to mislead this court with fabricated medical reports, false financial claims, and testimony built on sand. But today, we'll reveal the full extent of their intentions." He nodded to me. I rose, cane steady, and walked to the witness stand. Swore my oath, sat down, looked my children dead in the eyes. "Mr. Hunter," Carter said, "tell the court what you discovered in your daughter's kitchen 3 months ago." I took a breath. My voice was clear, steady, soldier-strong. I overheard my daughter telling her husband I made her sick, that she couldn't stand having me around, that I gave her the creeps. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Linda's face flushed crimson. "But that wasn't all," I continued. "I also heard her say they were planning to manage my money, that they'd keep being nice until I trusted them enough to sign everything over." I pulled a folded page from my jacket. Carter took it, handed it to the judge. "A transcript, Your Honor, pulled from a recording I made that night." The judge scanned it, his frown deepening. "Enter it into evidence." Daniel's lawyer leapt up. "Objection. These so-called recordings could be fabricated." Carter smirked. "Funny thing, counselor. They're not. And we've got timestamps, phone records, and a forensic analyst prepared to testify to their authenticity." The objection died in the air. Then Carter made his move. "Your Honor, we also have evidence that Daniel Hunter applied for multiple loans, claiming imminent access to his father's estate. He wasn't protecting his father. He was financing his own debts." The judge's gaze was cold now. "Mr. Hunter, care to explain?" Daniel's voice cracked. I thought the guardianship would be approved. I was just planning ahead." The judge's gavel slammed once. "Planning ahead with assets you had no legal control over. Dangerous ground, Mr. Hunter." The tension in the room was electric. But Carter wasn't finished. He signaled to me. I nodded, pulled another envelope from my coat pocket. "Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from." "These," I said, "are letters I wrote to my grandchildren. All 4 of them. Explaining exactly what their parents did, what they tried to do, and why family isn't built on money. It's built on loyalty. They'll get them after this hearing, no matter the outcome." I looked at Linda then. Her lips trembled, her eyes wide with panic. For the first time, I saw regret, maybe even fear. "Dad," she whispered, "please." I leaned closer to the microphone, my voice cold as steel. "You wanted me weak. You wanted me voiceless. Instead, I gave myself a louder voice than you'll ever have. And when my grandchildren read those letters, they'll know who betrayed who." The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that only comes before a hammer drops. Carter turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the evidence is overwhelming. This petition is not about care. It's about control. It's about greed. We move to dismiss immediately, with prejudice, and recommend referral for investigation into fraud." The judge leaned back in his chair, his gaze sweeping over Daniel and Linda like a spotlight. Their lawyer shifted uncomfortably, papers rustling in his trembling hands. "Mr. Hunter," the judge said at last, "you and your sister should think very carefully about what comes next. Because right now, this court is inclined to agree with Mr. Carter." The gavel struck. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning for a ruling. I stood, cane in hand, back straight as a rifle. Daniel stormed past me without a glance, his pride bleeding out like a stuck pig. Linda lingered just a second longer, eyes glassy, lips moving like she wanted to speak, but no sound came. Then she followed him out. Carter clapped me on the shoulder. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow we end this." I nodded. "No. Tomorrow, they end." Friday morning, the courthouse felt heavier. The air was thick, charged, as if the walls themselves knew judgment was coming. Daniel walked in first, jaw set tight, hands balled into fists. Linda followed, pale, eyes swollen from a sleepless night. Their lawyer whispered to them in hurried tones, but I could see the truth. They were cornered animals now. I sat at my table, cane propped against my leg, posture steady. Carter stood beside me, calm, unreadable, like a man who's already counted his victory. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. The gavel struck once. "This court has reviewed the petition for guardianship of Mr. Robert Hunter," he began. His eyes flicked down to the files, then up at Daniel and Linda. "What I see here is not the work of concerned children. It is a coordinated attempt to seize control of assets under the guise of care." Daniel shifted, ready to argue. The judge raised a hand. "Don't. You've had your chance." He turned his gaze on me. "Mr. Hunter, despite your age, the evidence shows you are fully competent to manage your own affairs. The petition is denied, with prejudice." The gavel slammed, but the judge wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for review. The fabricated medical report, the financial petitions, the attempted fraud, this court believes they warrant criminal investigation." The gallery erupted in whispers. Reporters scribbled furiously. Daniel's face went white, then red, then white again. Linda covered her mouth, eyes wide with horror. Their lawyer slumped, defeated. I sat still, steady, letting the words wash over me like gunfire I'd already survived. The judge stood. Court adjourned. The gavel hit one last time, echoing like a rifle crack. I rose slowly, cane in hand. My grandchildren sat in the back row, wide-eyed, whispering to one another. Emily caught my eye, tears streaking her face. She mouthed two words, "Thank you." I nodded once. That was enough. Daniel stormed out first, shoving past reporters, refusing to answer questions. Linda trailed behind, shoulders slumped, tissue crumpled in her fist. For once, no tears came. Maybe she'd run out. Maybe she finally saw the truth. Carter lit a cigarette outside the courthouse, offering me one. I shook my head. He grinned anyway. "Hell of a fight, Bob. You handled yourself like a soldier." I looked up at the Texas sky, blue and endless. That's all I've ever been. We shook hands, and he left me there on the courthouse steps, cane steady, heart steady, ready to face the rest of my years on my own terms. That night, I sat in my quiet Dallas house. Margaret's photo on the mantel, her eyes kind as ever. I poured a glass of whiskey, raised it to her. They tried, love. They really did. Thought they could bury me alive. But you know me. I don't go down easy. The house was silent, but I could almost hear her laugh. A knock came at the door. It was Emily, my eldest granddaughter. She stood there, clutching an envelope. "Grandpa," she said softly, "you gave me this letter. I read it. I needed to see you." I let her in. She sat at the table, eyes shining. "I don't care what Mom and Uncle Daniel did. I know who you are. I know what you've done for this family. I'm not going to forget it." My throat tightened, but I kept my voice even. "Good. Because it's up to your generation now. You'll decide what kind of family we become. Not them." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I reached across the table, took her hand, felt the warmth of loyalty that no court could give and no betrayal could take away. Later, when she left, I sat back down, staring at the darkness outside my window. The war inside my home was over. I hadn't just survived. I'd won. And the last words I spoke before I turned out the light were for myself, for Margaret, for anyone who ever thought old age meant weakness. They thought I was finished. They were wrong.